All right. Hi there, everyone. My name is Dr. Allison Davis Waddle. I'm one of the staff psychologists over at the Counseling Center at App State. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to take care of yourself during uncertain times. Right now, I think for us, that means primarily thinking about COVID-19 and being in quarantine, but I also think that this is a presentation that is completely applicable in other times as well. And so hopefully this information will be helpful for longer than the current pandemic lasts. So before we dive into the information, there are just a couple things that are helpful to know. So this is a workshop that we're providing through the Counseling Center. This is just intended to be psychoeducational. It's not something that is meant to constitute mental health treatment of any kind. If you are interested in services at the Counseling Center, I'm going to talk a little bit more about those later today. You can also go to our website at counseling.appstate.edu or call us at the phone number on the screen if you have questions or are looking to connect for mental health services. If you're experiencing an emergency, such as active suicidal thoughts, you can look at our website for emergency resources or contact your local emergency responder. Resources may differ based on the location that you're in, so that's something that's really important to keep in mind. This workshop is being recorded and will hopefully be shared on our YouTube account or some other social media venues. The only thing that will be visible for those folks who might be watching it later will be my video at the top of the screen and then my PowerPoint presentation. So if you're a part of this live, then your name or your video will not be a part of that presentation. All right. So let's get started. I wanted to talk a little bit about uncertainty and what that means. And I imagine most people are pretty familiar with that. I know that it's a really common experience. One of the reasons that I have the background that I have for my video today is that sometimes that's what uncertainty feels like. It feels like everything is on fire and you don't really know what's going on. And the joke that kind of goes along with this meme is that everything is fine. And uncertainty may not always feel that way. So uncertainty is something that you don't really know or don't really understand. And most folks think that that is a really uncomfortable situation to be in. A lot of common responses to uncertainty are just really worrying. So getting caught kind of in that anxiety spiral of, well, what's going to happen? What if this happens? What if this happens? And then what if this happens? The way that a lot of folks try to navigate that uncertainty is to plan. So I would definitely consider myself a planner, and we'll talk about some ways that planning can be helpful here in just a little bit. But in reality, we can't plan for everything. And so that's something that we're going to talk about today and trying to navigate uncertainty as best we can. Something that I really wanted to point out before we get started is that right now there are a lot of mental health concerns that are being impacted, especially by COVID-19 and being in quarantine, being isolated, not being able to connect with other people, having their routine completely thrown off. And again, that's not something that's specific to COVID-19, but very often comes along with any kind of uncertainty. So I think anxiety is a really great example of that. Anxiety makes you get into all those worst case scenarios. And when you aren't certain about something and how it might go, your anxiety is more likely to be impacted by that and get escalated. I mentioned a couple of things that could factor into depression as well. So if you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know what your life is going to be like, you don't know when you're going to see your friends, you don't know if you're going to get a job or not, you don't know if you're going to pass a class, and that can really activate symptoms of depression and just feeling like you don't know what to do and don't know how to handle that. And so we'll be talking a little bit about that here in just a little while as well. Something that not a lot of people are probably thinking about right now, but is something that comes up a lot for me. So my specialty when I am at the Counseling Center is working with eating concerns. And a lot of folks with eating concerns are really, really struggling right now. And they maybe can't access the foods that they typically would if they're not in stock, or they don't know they can't go to restaurants that they typically go to, different things like that. Having a routine is really important for eating concerns in a lot of cases. And so those folks who aren't able to do that in the same way right now can feel really impacted by that. And I think trauma is another really big one. So folks who have maybe experienced abuse growing up and never knew when something was going to be a particular way versus another way. So not knowing when it was going to be good versus when it was going to be bad. I think uncertainty can be really triggering for that, and not knowing what to kind of expect with things moving forward. And so again, specific to the current pandemic, a lot of folks are really, really struggling. And I just wanted to take a minute to kind of normalize that, because I think, again, everybody is alone and isolated right now. And it is really hard to feel connected to other people and to feel understood by other people. And so just knowing that that's common, and that there are other people who are feeling probably pretty similarly to how you're feeling, is something that's super important. And so if we're talking about uncertainty more broadly, you can't know everything. And I think a lot of people tend to have really negative perspectives of folks who do think they know everything, right? They talk about know-it-alls, and that not being something that's really really positive or really engaging or connecting. And so it's okay, normal and expected to not know things, but it just doesn't feel great when it's happening. And so the whole point of my presentation today is to kind of talk about those states of uncertainty and what you do when you're experiencing those states of uncertainty. All right, so let's start out with our planners, right? So I think one thing that can be really, really helpful in times of uncertainty is doing your best to control what you can, and being able to know the difference between those things. So what can you control and what can't you? So I think, again, something that's hard for a lot of folks right now is, oh, I'm so frustrated with other people and their opinions and the things that they're doing or they're not doing right now that I think that they should be. We can't control other people. And that's something that is hard and is frustrating. And that's one of those things that we can't control unless we try to do that by force, right? And that's not something that is typically acceptable for us to do. We can't control the things that happen to us in life for the most part. So we cannot control the experiences that are happening right now broadly with COVID-19. We cannot control if we are in a car accident, if it is something that somebody else is doing. We can't control a death of a loved one if that's something that we're experiencing. But what we can control are our thoughts, our reactions, our behaviors to those things or in response to those things. And so I wanted to take a few minutes and give some examples of what I mean by that. So you experience something really hard. You have some options. So you can say, wow, this is the worst thing that has ever happened to me. This is impossible. I don't know how I'm going to deal with this. I can't fathom being able to make it through this situation. That's one response. Another response is to say, wow, okay, this is really hard. This is something that, frankly, I wish that I didn't have to experience. But what do I want to do about it? What can I do about it? How do I want to respond to this? And just kind of checking in with yourself and saying, okay, what feels like it works for me right now? And I know that I say that really, really simply, but that that response is anything but that, right? So it's something that does take a lot of practice to do. Depending on what your age is, you've probably been in your patterns for a pretty significant period of time. And so trying to rewire your brain and help yourself think differently or respond differently is something that does take time, and it does take practice. And that's something that therapy can be really helpful with. And it's also something that can significantly change your perspective and your approach to situations. And so in terms of like COVID-19, the things that are happening right now, you can't control whether somebody else wears a mask or not. You can't control whether there are Clorox wipes or toilet paper in stock at the store. But what you can control is whether you follow the safety precautions, whether you are well informed about the situation, whether you choose to stay at home or engage in social distancing or go out to a party with your 50 closest friends, right? So All of those are things that you arguably have a lot more control over. And so something that a lot of people are, again, struggling with right now is how to respond to being home alone and being with your thoughts. And I think that that's something, again, that a lot of folks who struggle with mental health concerns experience pretty regularly is, oh my gosh, how do I be alone with my thoughts? This is not an okay place for me to be. This is really uncomfortable. And again, that's another place where you can take care of yourself differently. And so it's all about how you interpret the situation. It's all about how you respond to the situation. Because again, that's the piece that you have control over, not the situation itself. And so let's talk about some examples of things that you arguably do have more control over right now or in life more broadly. So you can establish a routine for yourself and some stability for yourself. So I know a lot of folks right now who are sleeping until 2 p.m. And some people who are doing that are saying, oh my gosh, I'm so lazy. I can't believe it. What's wrong with me? I've wasted my whole day. And some people are saying, you know what? I didn't have anything to do before 2 o'clock anyway. And so if I want my day during quarantine to be 2 p.m. to 2 a.m. and then I want to sleep from 2 a.m. to 2 p.m., then okay, there's nothing telling you that that can't be the routine that you establish for yourself. So it doesn't have to be the routine that you always had. You can decide each day to have a different routine. You have to figure it out. You have to experiment. You have to see what works for you. But the thing is, once you figure out what does work for you, then you are the person who is responsible for maintaining that stability or consistency. So I know for myself, if I don't start my day off with a shower, I will be completely useless for the rest of the day. If I don't change out of my PJ pants, I am going to be completely useless for the rest of the day. And so those are things that I do to establish that routine. If you're thinking about classes and how to navigate online classes, if you've never done that before, you don't know how to do that, then you can set up a routine for yourself and say like, okay, from 8 a.m. is pushing it if you're not a morning person, like 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. I'm going to study for class A. Then I'm going to take a break. I'm going to do lunch. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to do whatever. And then from 1 to 3, I'm going to study for class B. And if you have a class that has synchronous learning, then you can build your routine around that. Or if you don't, then you can set it up where you have a specific time every day that you're watching the video for that class. But again, it's all about feeling like you're doing something. So if you stay in your bed all day and you know that that's not something that's good for you, then very likely you're not going to feel great at the end of the day. But if you say, man, I know that I really, really like it when I cook breakfast for myself, so I need to start my day off that way, then do that. You get to have control over that. Nobody can change that for you. I kind of alluded to this piece just a little bit in terms of talking about like a shower, but making sure that you're taking care of your basic needs. So again, that's something that you have more control over than other situations. So if you have access to all of the things that you need, if you have access to food, shelter, water, all those kinds of things, or if you don't, finding a way to get access to those things, which feels important, knowing, okay, yeah, I smell by like day 2 if I don't shower. That's something that's really important. My hair gets super gross and that makes me feel gross. Brushing my teeth makes me feel gross all day. If I don't have breakfast, I'm super hangry, right? So if you know all of these things about yourself, then making sure that you're taking care of those basic needs can be something that you, again, have control over. So trying to establish some kind of routine with that, where if it feels comfortable for you, having 3 meals per day, if it feels more comfortable for you to have 6 small meals a day, then do that. But again, find what works for you and take care of yourself. And so we're going to talk about things more broadly than just like food, shelter, water, those kinds of things, but being very mindful of that. So I know a lot of people are consuming a lot of coffee right now in order to function. So making sure that you're supplementing it from time to time with a little bit of water. And knowing how you can navigate the situation differently to take care of yourself. So another thing that you can control right now is how much social media you consume and how much news you are viewing or listening to or reading. And again, I am mentioning COVID-19 specifically because that's a really active part of our world right now, but it doesn't have to be that. So there are a lot of folks that I know who Instagram isn't good for them. They don't feel like that serves them because there are messages there that are impacting their eating disorder recovery, for example. And so if you know what works for you and what doesn't, then try to structure your life around that. So the research around COVID-19 and pandemics, emergency situations, those kinds of things, the research around that shows that the amount of news intake you have around that can significantly impact your mental health, more likely negatively than anything else. Now, I'm not saying don't be informed. That's something that's really, really important, obviously, but doing it to an extent that feels like it's effective for you. So if that can be done through reading one article a day from a trusted source, okay, that does not mean having the news on a loop all day long. So just being, again, really mindful of what information is harmful for you and what information is good for you. Putting it into another context, some people really struggle with seeing an ex's social media page. And so finding a way to block that or unfollow that, or at least limit the amount that you're viewing something like that. That's something that is really important and probably doesn't serve you in the best way if it's something that you're thinking about. And so checking in with yourself regularly and saying like, okay, is this something that works for me? If it doesn't, then do something different. Another really important piece of control right now is being able to take it day by day, or if a day feels too long, take it moment by moment, and being able to say, okay, wow, quarantine feels like the longest time of my whole life. I think a lot of people feel like that right now. And also, if you're viewing something as temporary, it feels more manageable than if you're viewing something as potentially lasting for the rest of your life. And so the more boundaries, the more structure, the more guidance that you can put around something like that and make it time limited, the better typically for folks. So do what works for you. If you say like, wow, I can't think about what I'm going to be doing 2 weeks from now today, what I need to do is just focus on packing because I'm moving, or today what I need to focus on is caring for my body. Being able to say, okay, what do I need today, and focusing on that. That doesn't mean that your long-term plans have to go out the window. If that works for you, then okay, you can still think about your long-term plans. But if it feels overwhelming to do that and it feels like it's not serving you, again, that's something that you can do differently. One of my favorite things about this slide is being able to play to your strengths and your past successes. So again, you know you better than anybody else knows you. You know what works for you and what doesn't. And you have your whole life to reflect back on and say like, okay, I know it doesn't work for me if I stay in bed all day. I know it doesn't work for me if I don't move my body in a meaningful way. And you can say, all right, yeah, I know these things about myself. So what am I going to do about it? And being able to play to your strengths and access that information that you already have about yourself. If there are things that you're really good at, so if moving your body is something that is really healthy and effective and productive for you, do it. If art is something that's really healthy and productive for you, do it. If you love to cook, do it. And those are things that can help you feel like you have some kind of meaning and purpose. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but trying to focus on what works for you. And another piece, again, that feels really important is to be solution focused, not problem oriented. And that's maybe a language thing, but it's also a really important thing. So if you're focusing on a problem, then you're saying, okay, what's wrong? What am I doing? Why is this bad? And sometimes you can get, again, caught kind of in that spiral and feel a lot of guilt or shame around that, which doesn't feel good for a lot of people. And so saying, okay, what do I want to do about it? This is something that isn't working for me. What do I want to do about it? And the thing is, you may not know the answer to that question, which is okay too. And again, that's another thing that therapy can be really helpful for. If you have no idea what the next step for you is, talk to somebody about it. It doesn't have to be a therapist. It can be a friend. It can be whoever you trust. But just trying to say, okay, what do I want to do next? What's important to me? How can I do this in a way that serves me, my values, and the things that I want in my life best? And so all of those things that I just mentioned are talking about what you can do in terms of uncertainty experiences. But again, in reality, there are some things that you can't control. And the important distinction here is that a lot of these things that I just mentioned are hard, really hard to apply to situations that you can't control. So if you're trying to take care of someone else, for example, and trying to make sure that they're caring for their basic needs, you can only do so much, right? Unless you're there for them 24/7 and trying to navigate that. If you are trying to convince somebody else not to engage in social media or a news intake, or you are trying to encourage them not to fight with people in the comments, you can only do so much about that because they have their own choices in their own lives. And so being able to just take a step back and say, you know what, I've done what I can, and I have to be able to accept what I can't do, what I can't control. And again, trying to identify that line may be hard for folks if it feels like it's something that you need to control, which comes up a lot, I think, with uncertainty or with anxiety more specifically. But you can talk to somebody about that and say, is this feasibly a situation that I can navigate? All right. So again, another piece that feels really important is expression. So that is something that you can control. There are a lot of feelings and thoughts that come along with uncertainty. There's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of confusion. That's why it's uncertain, right? There are things that are, I call it jumbled around in your brain, typically when something feels uncertain, because there are so many scenarios that you can imagine, or things that you can think up that could potentially happen, but might not, right? So I think that being able to unjumble your brain is really, really important and can be really powerful. So there are a few ways to do that. One, you could consider therapy. And so again, I'll be talking a little bit about what our current services are at the Counseling Center later in the presentation. You don't have to get therapy through the Counseling Center, but that's where I work. So that's where I'm most informed about. And if people have questions about what therapy looks like, if you've never done it before, then you can always throw a question in the chat box, and I can talk about that a little bit later. So if you're watching it live, that is. So an alternative to therapy, if that's not something that feels comfortable for you, or if that's not acceptable culturally for you or in your family, then that's something that's important to think about. And so if that's not something that is accessible to you, then how can you meet that need elsewhere? So one option is to talk to the people who you feel safest or most comfortable with. So it can be your friends or your family or your chosen family. So sometimes the folks who are most prominent in your life are not the safest people in your life. And so trying to navigate that situation can be tricky sometimes, again, especially if you're social distancing at home, and if home isn't safe for you, then finding another outlet to be able to express yourself in a safe and comfortable way can be really important. And so if speaking out loud to somebody is not something that you have access to based on your circumstances, then try to focus on things that you can do for yourself. So you can journal. Sometimes just seeing something in writing can feel incredibly different than how it might feel in your head. In your head, there are so many things that are floating by that you're trying to grasp each one as it's coming around. Again, it feels like the fire around everything in my photo up here. But once you write something down and you can look at it and you can see it and you can distinguish it from another set of thoughts, or put things into categories, or just look at it from a different perspective, that can be incredibly meaningful. And so that doesn't have to be the super strict, like I have to journal 6 pages every night thing in order to be effective. It can be, wow, there are a couple of thoughts that I'm having right now that I really just need to jot down and I really need to see. And you can do that. And it doesn't have to be something that happens every day. It can be something that happens once every 2 months, but whenever you need it, whenever it works for you. You can do it on your phone, in notes. You can make a blog and voice your emotions and concerns that way. Again, whatever works for you. I added art and dance in here as well. Basically any kind of creative endeavor or creative expression where you can feel your emotions or express your emotions in a way that feels safe and comfortable for you. So I've seen beautiful dances that have been a way to express emotion and to move the body in a way that feels genuine for the way that you're feeling. But again, whatever works for you and your ability status, those kinds of things. Something that feels really, really important to put voice to is that it's okay to feel however you're feeling, whenever you're feeling it. There is no right response or right way to feel in response to anything. So take a death of a loved one, for example. Sometimes people think that you need to be in complete anguish. You need to be devastated. That might not always be the case for everybody. There could be trauma and abuse that are associated with that experience. And so somebody might feel happy or relieved or glad that someone has passed, or they might feel angry towards someone who they didn't get to say goodbye to or didn't get to connect to them in the way that they wanted to. So whatever way you feel is always okay. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily justifying ways that you respond or ways that you interact with other people. Those are things that, again, you have control over and may need to take responsibility for if you're lashing out at other people and hurting other people in the process. But it's still okay to be angry, and finding a way to do that in a healthy way for you feels important to be able to do. So COVID-19, again, a lot of people are confused about how to feel right now. Some people are glad to be home. Some people are really upset that things are online. And so not everybody feels the same way about everything, and you get to decide that for yourself. But the important part is that you express it and that you get it out of your brain. Again, to relieve that jumble or to get rid of the fire that may be going on inside your head. All right, so let's talk a little bit about relationships with other people. When you are experiencing uncertainty, and stability is something that often feels really important. And so a way that some people, but not all people, feel stability is to spend time with other people. And so again, that's something that is a little bit harder right now. This might be the only time that technology is seen as something good, because you can still connect that you're close to and that you enjoy being around. You can do game nights, trivia nights, those kinds of things electronically. You can now more easily go out with folks, but socially distance and be safe. You can, in normal non-COVID-19 times, you can go and connect with your friends, or again with people who feel really supportive for you, and just be around them. You don't always necessarily have to say anything, but to just be around like a grounding stone, somebody who can help keep you grounded and connected with yourself and with the world, feels really important when everything around you feels like it's on fire. I think a really great thing to do when you're feeling uncertain is, again, to enact change or to control things in any way that you can. And so something that has been really amazing and beautiful to me in, again, COVID-19 times is people being there for other people. So people are making masks, people who can sew and who have the skills and resources necessary to do that are contributing in that way. People who have the ability to donate financially are doing that. People are going out grocery shopping for folks who are immunocompromised, right? So there are a lot of ways that people are contributing right now that can feel really helpful. And again, in non-COVID-19 times, that is also something that can feel really important. So if you are, if you want the world to be a great place, then put out as much good as you can into the world, right? So paying it forward in some way, or holding a door for somebody. It can really be something super, super simple, but just being there for other people can help you feel connected to other people and help you feel like you're a part of something that's bigger than yourself. And again, you can enact change in some way to leave a positive impact, which I think is great. So like I alluded to at the beginning of this slide, for some people, relationships with other people are great. For some people, relationships with other people are not great. And so it's important to set boundaries and to take care of your own needs in any time, but especially when you're feeling really uncertain and you don't know what works best for you. You get the space to try to figure that out. So whenever it's feasible for you to say no, say no. Don't take on something just because you feel like you have to. Don't increase your burden if it feels like it's not something that's going to serve you or serve other people well. So sometimes it's hard to be able to say no. Sometimes there are situations where you can't say no. So you can't say, yeah, no, I'm not really going to take that test for my class this week. But maybe you can talk to your instructor about it and say like, hey, is there something that I can do differently? Can I take the test next week? Can I do it early because I really need to take care of myself this weekend? Finding something that feels like it sets healthy and effective boundaries for you. It doesn't always mean that everybody is going to respond effectively to those boundaries. Again, you can only control you. You can't control the things or responses of other people, but you can do your best to communicate, in a way that feels effective for you. Taking breaks is also really important. There have been a lot of articles lately about Zoom fatigue and how people are feeling in response to that. And so if it's possible for you to take breaks between the things that you're doing on a screen, then do that. Try to get outside if you can. I know the weather has been horrible in Boone these last few days, but being able to get out when you can and stretch your legs, move your body, and to even connect with other people. So even if you're just talking to somebody on the phone, then you're able to rest your eyes. You can lay down somewhere with your eyes closed and talk to somebody on the phone and still feel connected. I already spoke a little bit to this earlier in the presentation, but if home isn't a safe place, you probably can't set a lot of boundaries in the way that you want to. And so that's a little bit trickier, and something that I would definitely recommend navigating with a therapist is how can I set boundaries, even if it feels scary to do that, but doing it in a way that's safe. And so that, again, is something that requires a lot more nuance and is very specific to situations. And so I won't speak too much on that, but I did want to put voice to trying to set boundaries in difficult situations. Okay, so connecting with yourself is obviously something that's really important when there are things that are uncertain. So in with yourself. So what do I need? That is one of my favorite questions to ask folks who I work with. And what do you need right now? What do you need from me? And sometimes we make assumptions for people when we're talking to them, and we'll say, oh, I know exactly what you need right now. You want advice right now. And we just dive right in before somebody tells us what they need. And also, there are times when advice may not be the thing that somebody needs. And so being able to just check the assumptions that you're making and say, I'm feeling myself really want to give you advice right now, but I don't know if you want that. What do you need? You can do that for yourself too, and say, okay, yeah, I'm getting a strong urge to eat some ice cream right now. Is that really what I need? What's happening for me right now? Why do I want ice cream? Okay, I'm really upset. Why am I really upset? And then trying to navigate that in a way that feels, again, like it's going to serve you in a way that's effective. And so not jumping into something just because it's the first thing that pops into your head, but really checking in with yourself and being in tune with yourself. Because once you're more aware of how you feel and how you are finding yourself wanting to respond to a situation, then you're more able to determine how you can or how you should, or how you want to respond to a situation. So another piece that is really important in times of uncertainty is practicing gratitude. And so when things feel completely out of control and it is just really overwhelming, everything starts to feel that way. Even if there's just one situation that feels that way, everything feels out of control. And so for you to say, wow, I'm really glad that I had access to food and water today. I'm really glad that I have people in my life who love me. I'm really glad that I have the opportunity to pursue higher education, right? And being able to check in on those things and say like, okay, yeah, there are things that feel good in my life right now, even if there are other things that don't feel good. Meaning and purpose, again, is something that I kind of mentioned earlier, but didn't speak a lot to. When things are uncertain, you can check in with yourself and say, what's important to me? What's important to my life? What impact do I want to have? Who do I want to be? And quarantine's a really great time to spend with yourself and to reflect, and being able to say, okay, something that's really important to me is making a difference in other people's lives. So how do I do that? How can I do that in a way that feels safe, comfortable, and effective for me? And being able to align yourself and your life with the values that you have. So some people may have appearance as a value that's really high on their priority list. But then when they sit back and they say, oh, actually, you know, my appearance isn't the thing that feels most important to me. It's my family and the people who are in my life. So how can I shift my focus from my appearance to focus instead on my family? And again, if you are looking at your meaning or your purpose or your values, you're focusing on things within yourself. So those are things that you can hone in on, that you can focus on. And that may be one of the things that feels uncertain sometimes. So what is my meaning? What is my purpose? And if you get caught in that spiral, then this doesn't have to be a bullet point that is necessarily something that you focus on if it increases uncertainty. But it could also be one of those things that you talk to somebody about in therapy and say, hey, I'm really having a hard time figuring out what matters to me, having a hard time figuring out what major is important to me. And then being able to, again, verbalize it and talk about it and say like, oh, okay, well, now that I've talked about this out loud, I know what feels good for me and what doesn't feel good for me. And part of that may be parsing apart what you think other people want for you or what you think society wants for you, which again is a bigger, more nuanced kind of thing, but it is something that you can focus on. And so meaning and purpose doesn't have to be a lifelong endeavor. It can be, okay, how can I make today meaningful? How can I make today purposeful? How can I live in line with the values that I hold today? It's okay for those things to change. You don't have to have the same values your whole life. Typically, there are things about you that change as you mature in your life. So when you're 4 years old, your priority may be chicken nuggets and mac and cheese and cartoons. But when you're 45 years old, it could still be chicken nuggets, mac and cheese, and cartoons, definitely. That's my goal. But it may not be, and that's okay. And so part of what I just mentioned and part of my intention in doing my virtual background the way that I did hits on that next bullet point. So incorporate humor when and where you can. Laughter is powerful. Smiling is powerful. There's research that shows that even if you smile, if it's not aligned with how you're feeling in that moment, it changes the way that your brain works and the way that your brain responds to a situation. And so if you've ever been in a fight with somebody and then they do something and they make you laugh, and then you say, don't make me laugh right now, I'm mad at you. But then it feels lighter, right? That doesn't mean that that situation didn't still impact you or that you're still not upset about it, but you are able to maybe view it more objectively. And so sometimes that can happen with uncertainty too. If you're able to not invalidate your emotions, not discount your emotions, but to help yourself view them more objectively. Very oftentimes we get super emotionally connected with whatever it is we're experiencing in that moment. And then because we do that, it's really hard to disentangle ourselves from it. And so humor is one of those things that gives us a little bit of distance. So we can say, wow, okay, yeah, I am being a loon right now. Okay. Yeah, so let me think about that a little bit. And then you back up from it and then you think about it and you say like, okay, yeah, I'm not being a loon right now, but what can I do about this situation that feels like it would serve me well? Another part that's really, really important about this, 2 words that I love are grace and compassion. And so you're bound to make mistakes. You're bound to not always do everything perfectly or right or in a way that you think you should or have to do. And so being able to be kind to yourself in that. I really doubt that you berate your friends every time that they make a mistake. You're there to support them. But very often we treat ourselves differently than we treat other people. And so being able to say, all right, yeah, I made a mistake, or, I didn't go on that run that I wanted to go on today, maybe tomorrow, instead of saying, wow, you're such a failure. How could you do this? And viewing yourself super negatively. Again, it's how you respond to the situation that feels really important. So sometimes your best is going to be different on every day, given how you slept the night before, or whether you ate, or whether you had a fight with a friend. All those are going to be things that impact your ability to function in the way that you want. And so being able to externalize that and not blame yourself for mistakes that you might make, that is a really critical and really essential distinction and difference. So trying to reframe things more positively, or even if you can't do it positively, frame them more neutrally. Getting outside and moving your body, if those are things that are important to you. If you hate outside and you hate moving your body, then don't do those things. But for a lot of people, those are things that can help them feel more connected to themselves and feel more connected to the world. And it can increase endorphins in your body and improve mood. And so there's research behind some of that stuff, but sometimes exercise isn't something that feels good for somebody. And so just trying to, again, negotiate with yourself and say what feels good for me and what doesn't. And then this next point is to, again, do what feels good for you. So some people knit, some people run, some people love to watch Netflix, some people like to clean, but do what feels good for you and try to take care of yourself and take care of your needs in a way that makes sense for you. Again, we're controlling what we can, how we can, and self-care is something that we have more control over. It doesn't have to be selfish. Self-care is essential. You can't pour from an empty cup is something that I hear people say a lot. And so if caring for other people is something that's really important to you, then it's really important to take care of yourself too. Meditation and mindfulness can also be something that helps you feel connected to yourself, to something larger than yourself. I'm not going to get too into that today, but that is one of the topics that's going to be covered later in one of our Feeling Good workshops later this summer. So if you're interested in thinking about that more, then you're more than welcome to check out that workshop as well. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about counseling center services right now. So this is right now as of June 28th, or May 28th. And so that is that's important to keep in mind. Our services will evolve over time depending on how things are going in the world. But for right now, students who want to access services at the counseling center in the summer have to have a couple of things. So one is that you are either enrolled in the most recent spring semester, so this past spring, and this upcoming fall semester. So you have to be enrolled of both of those to be able to access summer session, or you're enrolled in at least one summer session. So you don't have to be enrolled in both summer 1 and 2 or the whole time, but as long as you're at least taking one summer class. And so if you have questions about that or that doesn't make sense, then you can always contact the counseling center and ask if you're eligible for services. Another thing that, at least for right now, is a part of the eligibility for our services is that you have to be in North Carolina. And I know that that may feel a little bit weird, but in order for us to provide therapeutic services, so you can watch this workshop from wherever you are, and we're not violating anything by doing that, but we are not allowed to provide therapy across state lines just based on our licensure laws. That's something that is part of a lot of conversations right now and that we're trying to navigate differently. But as of right now, all the folks who are going to be engaging in our services on an ongoing basis have to be physically located in North Carolina. There are some things that we can do for folks outside of North Carolina. So even if you're not in North Carolina right now and you're interested in seeing what we have to offer or how to get connected, then you can still call us or connect with us and we can help you figure out how to do that. So the services that we're offering right now are, we're doing initial consultations like we would be during a typical semester. The only thing that's different right now is that we're doing them on the So we're still taking about 30 minutes, still talking to students, still sending them paperwork through our web portal for them to give us more information about themselves, but trying to get an idea of who they are, what they need, and how we can be helpful. So that's something that we're offering right now. Currently, we are doing phone therapy. We are working on video-based services, but that's not something that we are currently able to do at the counseling center. So we are doing phone therapy, and I know that that may sound weird or may sound impersonal or informal, but there are a lot of people who are doing it right now and they really like it, and it may not be as odd as you think. So I would encourage you to at least give it a shot and see how it feels for you. And then if it doesn't work, then we can help you get connected to a different service that, or a different provider that might be more helpful for you. We are still offering emergency services. So again, those are by phone, but if somebody is experiencing suicidal thoughts or had a recent sexual assault or recently lost a loved one, those would be things that we would be able to connect you with very quickly. So you could just call the counseling center and we would be able to talk to you about emergency services that are available for you. If you're not in the immediate Boone area, then we can talk about resources that might be available where you're at. We have virtual workshops, so kind of like the one that you're a part of right now, but we have quick access workshops, which are kind of series that we have that are focused on different topics. So we have one that is focused on anxiety. We have one that's focused on self-compassion, which I talked about a little bit. And we have one that is focused on it's about emotion regulation and life skills. So that's something that can be really helpful too. Those are all on our YouTube page if you wanted to access those there, or if you wanted to jump in live so that you could ask questions, you could do those too. More information about all of these are on our website. And then we have self-help resources for a bunch of different topics. So anxiety, depression, sleep, relationships that are available on our website. There are books, videos, handouts. There are even some Netflix specials that are on there that we recommend to some folks. So those are things that we're offering right now. If you are curious about something that maybe does or does not fall into one of these categories, then you're more than welcome to contact the counseling center and we can help you get connected. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the fall semester before we finish up today. So semester is something that we're uncertain about right now. And so it felt like it fit really well into this topic. And so if you're watching this and fall semester is not coming up, then you can skip ahead or turn it off or whatever feels good for you. But at least wanted to talk about it a little bit for those of you who are watching it live. There are a lot of things that are going to be hard about the fall semester. And so again, going back to some of the things that we talked about earlier, controlling what you can and accepting what you can't. So there are going to be instructors who aren't great at facilitating online classes. And that is something that's going to be hard and hopefully something that you can navigate as part of that. Maybe the department is taking care of that by asking people if they feel comfortable doing it or not. I don't know. But there are resources available to you to help you be successful in the fall semester. And so one of the biggest things that I heard in the spring semester when everything kind of hit the fan was, I don't know how to do online classes, or these don't work for me, or I didn't pay for this, or I'm so disconnected from everything and I feel like I can't get the help that I need. And so my hope is that if you're taking anything away from the information that I'm giving you today, is that there are resources available to you. That might be us at the counseling center. It might be based on some of the workshops or the resources that we're providing, but there are other resources on campus as well. So two that I listed here, and these are by no means the only ones that are available, but there's the Student Learning Center, who talks about things like time management and how to fully engage in classes and how to determine what your learning style is, which is something that's really cool. And some people may not know that. The Wellness and Prevention Center also has peer-led services. It's called We Coach. They do a variety of different things. They even do financial planning as part of it. And so there are folks and resources on campus that you can get connected with based on whatever your specific needs are. And so if you don't know what you don't know and you don't know what you need, then The counseling center is a pretty great hub for how to figure that out. So we have a pretty comprehensive list of what services are offered by different offices and who might be a best fit for you. And so even if you don't know, then you could always call and say, hey, who provides services related to substance use? And then somebody could really quickly and easily tell you, hey, yeah, that's the wellness center. But if you don't know, then find somebody who does know. That's a great strategy as well. So if you know what your learning style is, that's something that will serve as a strength for you. If you don't know what your learning style is, you can figure it out. Some people are really visual, some people are auditory, some people really like to take notes, some people have to record things. So whatever works best for you, you can still do that, even if you're doing it online. The only thing is that maybe you have to adjust it a little bit. And so there's more accountability on your part if you're doing things online and if your instructor says, oh, everything's just due by the end of the semester. There are some people who love that and there are some people who hate that. And so if you're somebody who really likes structure, then you can come up with a plan for yourself for the semester. And again, establish a routine and keep yourself on track. If you think that you can function really well without having any kind of structure, then go for it and turn things in when it feels like it makes sense for you. But the important part is knowing what works for you and how to achieve that in a learning environment that maybe you're not used to. Another thing that I think has been impactful for a lot of folks is technology. So whatever technology you need for your class is something that you're going to have to familiarize yourself with. And again, that's hard and unfortunate if that's not something that you were planning on doing. And if you're viewing it from an objective standpoint, realistically, if you're going into a course that you've never taken before, you're familiarizing yourself with that too. And so viewing technology as another course that maybe you're taking and that you need to familiarize yourself with. Something that I'd really like to highlight, again, in terms of COVID-19 and things that are happening right now, you need to kind of create stations for yourself or spaces for yourself where you're doing different things. And so if you're watching TV in your bed and you're sleeping in your bed and you're talking to your friends in your bed and you're trying to take an exam in your bed, then your bed's going to feel like a really overwhelming place probably. And so if you like to be creative in your kitchen, then having that as your creative space, or outside. Or if there's a place that you really like to study, if you have a desk, taking advantage of that, or sitting on the floor, doing something different. But again, whatever it is that works for you, but trying to have spaces for different things so that you can put yourself inside the brain of whatever you want to be engaging with or doing in that moment. Like I said earlier, establishing a routine is something that's really important. It doesn't have to be a routine that's determined by anybody else unless you're, again, taking a synchronous class where you have to tune in at a specific time. Even in terms of that, if there's not a class that you, a time that you function really well in, if they're offering it at a different time, then trying to be able to do that, or request accommodations or recordings if that's something that feels like it would be helpful for you. Worst case scenario is somebody says no. But again, you can't control what somebody else says or does, but you can do your best to try to accommodate your needs in the best way that you can. Taking breaks, again, something that's really important. I imagine that classes are going to be spaced out differently than they have been before, but that's not something, again, that I know. But trying to take breaks and ground yourself and center yourself and prepare yourself for whatever it is that you're going to go into next. And so if you're taking a lot of gen ed classes and one minute you're in art brain and the next you're in exercise brain and the next you're in chemistry brain, then you need to find a way to make those transitions for yourself in a way that feels effective. Asking questions is always something that I recommend. Again, you have no control over whatever the responses are that you get, but there's typically no risk in asking questions. You're not going to lose anything. It's just going to be no, and you're going to be back where you were in the first place. And so ask questions if you have them. Try to connect with other students who may be in similar classes. You can do tutoring, study groups. There are a lot of online groups like App State Classifieds, for example, where I see people all the time asking about, hey, does anybody know anybody who offers this? and connecting again with resources. So if there's something that you don't know, somebody else probably does. Rewarding yourself can be something that's really important. So that goes with the next point of being kind to yourself. So it's a lot to sit in front of a computer all day. It's a lot to study. It's a lot to get out of bed every day. And so reward yourself in a way that, again, feels good for you. So I think the example that I always see in textbooks is like, oh, put an M&M at the end of a page, and then once you read that, then you get the M&M. That's not always something that works for folks. So if you have eating concerns, that might not be something that works for you. If you really like to move your body, then you can say, okay, I'm going to read 3 pages, and then I'm going to go move my body for 5 minutes. Do whatever it is that works for you, but your reward has to be something that's meaningful and motivating to you. And be kind to yourself. This is new and hard and weird for everybody. And so, again, you're going to make mistakes. Things are going to be hard. They're going to be different, but trying to adjust to that in a way that you're not beating yourself up is really important. And then finally, doing what you can to keep yourself and others safe. So I know that there are a lot of different viewpoints on this, but trying to be mindful of taking care of yourself and other people and how that might play out in the fall semester, what rules and regulations there might be on campus or otherwise in order to keep other people safe. Okay. So the last thing that I want to mention really quickly, if you're watching this right now and you have been offered the opportunity to get extra credit for attending this workshop, I'm going to pop something in the chat, and there's an evaluation form that we would love if everybody would fill out. But especially if you're looking for extra credit from a course, you have to fill out an evaluation, and then you put your email address in that, and then you should get an email that you're able to forward to your instructor. If you don't know if they offer extra credit, you can ask. Worst case scenario, they say no. If you're watching this video as a recording, obviously there's not a chat box that you have access to, but if you have questions about how to get access to the evaluation, you can contact the Counseling Center. Again, my name is Dr. Allison Davis Waddle. You're more than welcome to reach out to me directly and to ask any questions that you have there. And so I want to open up the opportunity for questions. Y'all can't use your mics to be able to do that, but if you have a question that you want to pop in the chat box, then I'll wait a couple of minutes for you to do that. If there aren't any questions in the next couple of minutes and folks are signing off, then I'll go ahead and end the recording and close out the meeting. But I am so glad that you were able to be here today and that you decided to hang out with me and watch this video. And I really hope that it was something that was helpful for you and that you at least got something out of one thing that I mentioned at some point in my spiel along the way there was that if you don't know what therapy is like, or you've never done therapy before, you had questions about it, I think that there are parts of this that would be typical for what I might talk about with somebody in therapy, skills or strategies that I might use with them. But this person that you're seeing is me. It is who I come into therapy as, and it's somebody that I know. It's something that I know a lot of my colleagues do as well. And so folks say that it's really hard to find a therapist that you like or that you connect with. And so just being able to kind of test it out and see if therapy feels like a good fit for you, or if a specific person feels like a good fit for you. And so we might not always be able to accommodate those needs, but we have a lot of our staff who are doing these kinds of workshops. And so if you want to get a sense for everybody's style and who they are and the topics that they're passionate about, these workshops are a really great way to do that. All right. I am not seeing any questions in the chat box. I am gonna mute myself and stop my video, and I'm going to hang out for 2 more minutes just in case somebody's typing a long question. But again, if not, thank you so much for being here today, and I hope that you have a great day.